Today we're going to be talking about the differences and similarities between public relations, advertising, and marketing. This entire week's readings and lessons are all talking about how they are similar and how they are different. And you need to understand how they all work separately as well as together. So our guest today is Assistant Professor Dr. Danny LaGree at the Kansas State Mass Communications Program. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you, Barb.
Yeah. Now, I know that you have experience in the field as well as the academic background and credentials.
Yes.
So I'd like you to talk a little bit first about how public relations, advertising, and marketing are different.
Yes, they are very different. A lot of people think that they are alike, while they complement each other, they are very different. So I first want to start with just kind of a brief description of what is public relations. I think a really good description of that is how I define it is really the intersection of creativity and strategy. And that's one of the things that really drew me to the field, is that you have to be a planner, you have to be detail-oriented, and this really intersects with being creative, because a PR budget is a lot smaller oftentimes than a marketing or advertising budget, and we have to be creative with what we do. And in terms of recognizing those opportunities, kind of latching on to what's happening in pop culture and things like that, that's a really good way to get exposure for the company and organization that you represent. So in terms of how public relations is different than advertising and marketing, I think a good way to illustrate this is an example from an organization that I used to work for. So I did some work in fashion PR for a jewelry company, and the jewelry was made all out of sterling silver, and sterling silver is a natural resource. So what happens whenever the price increases for that natural resource, it becomes more rare, harder to find, then the price goes up. So that's something that marketing is concerned about. Marketing is really concerned with the 4 Ps: product, price, place, promotion. So marketing has to determine, how are we going to get the materials for this product? What are the price points going to be? In which areas are we going to distribute the product? And then how are we going to maybe work with advertising to promote that product? From a public relations standpoint, one way to look at this is to think, what are some long-term strategic goals that we can focus on that would contribute to the sustainability of our organization, knowing that this is a natural resource and that we have to look internationally to get these kinds of products. So from a public relations standpoint, my suggestion was that we partner with a nonprofit organization and go to these areas where people are using these resources and help to train women to make these jewelry pieces so that they can get a better income. They learn some life skills. They basically develop their own businesses, and what that contributes to our organization from a PR perspective is it helps to elevate the public's perception of the brand even more, because we're doing something to contribute to the goodwill of our society, which also feeds into a corporate social responsibility program, which really speaks to thinking not only in terms of sales of that product, but also how our product can do good for society, and then how are we going to tell that story? How are we going to engage with influencers and public opinion leaders to help tell our story and really increase the credibility of the organization and what we stand for? Paid time and space. So paid media in comparison to earned media. I'd say that that's one of the key differentiators between advertising and public relations. So in terms of telling a story like the one I just described, it's really important to establish those mutually beneficial relationships with the media. So from advertising's perspective, you might have those media partners that you reach out to and negotiate paid space. But from a public relations perspective, you might have those long-term relationships with reporters or with news anchors that you have built over time. You contact them and keep in touch with them whenever you don't need something from them. You know, if they have a great story, you let them know, you know, I read your recent article, it was great, or I saw your recent segment. I really appreciate, you know, what you're doing to inform our public. And then when it comes time for you to have something good to say about your organization, you have that relationship developed, you pitch the story to the reporter that you already have cultivated a relationship with, and that generates earned media. So while your organization is paying you for your time as the person, as part of the public relations team, it's earned media because you aren't paying for that specific space to feature your brand or your organization. How are they the same? I think that the common goal is to help sell product, to help promote the goodwill of an organization, to help the organization be seen in a positive light. So for advertising, it's really easy to track those metrics, especially from a digital media perspective. We can track, you know, click-throughs and maybe how many people were viewing a television show program whenever our commercial aired, for example. But for public relations, those metrics are a little bit harder because oftentimes they're more intangible. So measuring things like brand reputation and how much the public might trust our organization